Shotgun finger, you know where you feel. Put up your right hand and your left one, two, and then gun finger, this a the gun finger. Gun finger, this a the gun finger. You coulda strong like a lion, quick like a ninja. Fit you down your dance, but man no linger. Gun finger, this a the gun finger. Gun finger, this a the gun finger. You coulda strong like a lion, quick like a ninja. Fit you down your dance, but man no linger.
Welcome to Ring Talk, where I am starting the biggest apology in the world to Giorgio Isaila, who I doubted last week could stop Fons Alexander because the man's not been stopped in 170 fights for a proper stoppage. And Giorgio Isaila has gone out and done it. Giorgio Isaila, I will find out what the odds are on you becoming a world champion, and I will put a bet on by this time next week.
Hold on, and I want to see the betting slip to prove it, Martin.
I will share my screen. I will find out how I can get a bet on that. Someone tell me which bookmaker I can go to. Giorgio Isaila, we're going to come on to you in a minute. But of all the predictions I could ever make, he goes and stops Fons Alexander. The only person to stop him and keep him down for the 10 count, Giorgio Isaila, you're the star of the week for Goodwin Boxing. That is a ridiculous win. All praise to you. We'll come on to it in a bit. Back to the start. Ring Talk, the Goodwin Boxing Show, weekly with myself, Martin Theobald, and with Steve Goodwin. How are you, Steve?
I'm good, my friend, but we are doing it weekly now, which is that we're not going to do it passionately. We're going to do it every week and cover all the news, not just our shows, but we'll cover everything that people want to talk about in boxing.
Yeah, we're going to try and come up with like a conversation point per week. And maybe some weeks it'll be we chuck it out for people's questions.
Yeah.
We've got one we're going to come on to later, which is Simon Jordan good for boxing? He polarizes opinions. He's got a checkered history within football. You can't doubt the man's intelligence and that he has the balls to stick an opinion on the line. Are they good? Are they bad? We'll come on to it in a bit. And we haven't actually sort of discussed it ourselves. I don't know what your view is, but I do have a view on it. But before we get into that, let's take a look at the show of the weekend where Giorgio Isaila unofficially now is the main event of every Goodwin boxing card, because if he can stop Fons Alexander, he can stop a brick wall.
Here's my problem. The cost of staging a Giorgio fight has just gone up.
Yeah. There's a lot of jeopardy now in facing Giorgio Isaila. Remember the name, people. Remember, I will, because I made a terrible prediction. So how was the show, Steve, on Saturday night?
It was actually, I genuinely went to the show. I told to you, and I thought, we've had so many. It's been a disaster of dropouts, pullouts, which we covered last week, and I thought, oh God, it's going to be a bit of a flop. It was really good. The whole show, we'll cover it in a minute. The show was really good. I really, really enjoyed it. And we'll come on to the fights in a minute. But it was a really good show. And it's sometimes you go there with low expectations and you walk away thinking, that was a brilliant night. And it was one of them. It was just really good. You wouldn't have expected it, but it was really, really good.
And that happens more often than people would think. And we have a WhatsApp group chat, and it's always when Dave Evans texts through on his way home from the show. Dave Evans being the whip at Goodwin boxing shows, and shows that I miss where Dave texts through going, really enjoyed that tonight. I think if he really enjoyed it, it must have been something that wasn't anticipated.
He loved it. He came up with himself, really loved it tonight. I really loved it tonight. So it was really good. And there was a few stars of the show, there really was. There was some stars on the show and some really good performances. Also some crazy fight that was nuts, which we'll come on to in a minute. It was nuts, not in a good way, but a bad way, but it was a crazy fight. So let's deal with them. So I'll come. Giorgio Isaila, Fons Alexander, round 4, an unbelievable body shot. Dropped Fons for the 10 count. It was probably a 15 count. He wouldn't have got up. It was an absolute peach of a shot. I actually looked back And I thought, I'm going to look back at Giorgio's amateur record again. And he won 16 out of 20 or 17 out of 20 amateurs and was ABA champion.
Right.
He's got pedigree. But what he showed on Saturday was he's got the ability to go really, really far as a professional boxer. He was, it wasn't just a one punch. He was totally dominating the ring boxing skill-wise and knocking Fons around the ring. He was very powerful, and he done an absolutely amazing job. I don't think he's a sensational one-punch knockout artist or anything like that, but he's accurate, pinpoint accuracy. What beat Fons was the actual accuracy of the body shot, rather than it wasn't a big punch to the chin. He's a big puncher. I still don't think he's a massive puncher, but I do think he's so accurate with his shots. He can hurt people with accuracy and combinations. But I've got to say, hats off to him and his trainer, Anton Pandan. We've got to give him credit, because Anton is what you'd call a rookie novice trainer. He's got a lot of amateur experience as a trainer, but he's only recently really come into the program. But he's done an amazing job with Giorgio, an amazing job. And the team together work really well. And I'm really excited about Giorgio Isaila, really excited.
It's worth probably noting, you and I have sat through, I don't know, thousands of prospect versus journeyman fights over the years. I think of some of the likes of Chris Lilley, for instance, Jordan Granham these days. What people may not necessarily appreciate in those fights is that the journeyman will, most of the time, give the body up, and they'll sort of allow the prospect, sorry, I'm just letting my cow, allow the prospect sort of almost free rein into those shots around the ribs. They cover their chin so they don't take the damage there, but you so often see shots sunk in, sort of, they might take a bit off the elbows, but those journeyman bodies are teak tough. And I always think about Chris Lilley was the one who's sort of like, you could have taken a baseball bat to it and he wouldn't flinch, you'd imagine. But I would say the same about Fons Alexander. So for it to be a body shot that drops him and stops him from getting up, that is an incredible achievement. So yeah, that's a great testament.
Roll on Giorgio, he'll be out again in November. We'll look forward to seeing him back, and he done absolutely fantastic. I'm very impressed. And so he's now 4-0. He's moving forward, and I'd expect to see him in titles next year. Southern Area next year for him, welterweight division. He'll be a handful for anybody next year.
Brilliant.
Really great. Second one I want to give extra special credit to is Ellis Steward. Ellis Steward, we put him up against Mike Biles. Now, Mike Biles is not a traditional journeyman. He comes to win, and he was a winning record, and he's been on the road, but only the really good kids box him. And before I made the fight, and a couple of people who I respect said, "Are you sure about this? Are you really sure about this?" And I said, "I think he's ready, Ellis." And I spoke with Terry, his trainer, his dad's trainer. And I said, "Look, this is the hardest fight of his career, but I think it's what he needs." But it wasn't without jeopardy, as I said last week. And he got cut in, I think it was the second round with a headbutt. And he had quite a bad cut. But he overcome that, and he ran out 58-56 winner. And I had him, I had it slightly wider, but I think it was a fair card. But it was an absolute perfect fight. He had to overcome adversity, a head clash. Mike Biles was a typical man that would go in there, use the head quite a bit. There was quite a lot of other stuff going on. But he's had to learn through adversity. And I thought it was an absolutely brilliant fight. I thought he grew into a man. I think it was a brilliant performance. I think that he showed us that he's got plenty of potential. And we're going to bring him on. And he's going to be back out again on the 7th of December. And I'm looking forward to seeing him out again. He was fantastic.
Good.
Jamie Bradley, which I think will be Martin Theobald will join the fan club of Jamie Bradley. Big Tottenham supporter. Over 200 people there. It reminded me a bit like when Nathan Heaney started to build up Stoke. He's one of our own, and the Tottenham and everything else. This kid could be huge, absolutely huge. Not just, I want to say this now, not just for the fact he sells lots of tickets. That's That's his bonus. But he's supremely talented. But you combine talent with having a following like he's got, the sky's the limit. I can see him becoming a big TV fighter potentially in 18 months if he can carry on making that build of fans like this. Because TV companies are going to want him. He's exciting, and the support he brings is just we're just like a baby steps of Warrington and everybody, and obviously I just mentioned, what's his name now? I just mentioned Nathan Heaney. So
yeah, the Hatton day.
It's that type of vibe. You could feel it in the air. And I want to say another thing about his supporters. There were 200 of him there. They were so well behaved. They were respectful to Biles. They cheered for their man. They made your hair stand on end. It was amazing. I see you need to go next time Jamie Bradley's fighting, Martin. You need to go. You'll like it.
I'll be there. As I mentioned to you, I've got a friend who's a Spurs season to get hold of. I'm a Spurs fan myself. And my friend who's a Spurs season ticket holder mentioned it to me at football on Sunday morning about this Spurs lad who was fighting last night. He knew about it because of the talk within the Spurs sort of forums and conversations. He didn't actually realise it was one of your shows that he was fighting on. But yeah, he'll sort of come down with me next time Jamie's on, I'm sure.
He's back on 7th of December, Jamie. So he's out on the same show as Ellis. So yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's sort of evidence that the growth and that fan base, because you see it done two ways. One is that it's sort of forced that a boxer sort of picks a fan base, Richard Riakporhe, and decides if they want to be a Millwall or a Crystal Palace fan that month. Jamie's is organic. Jamie's is done via family traditions, family roots, and building up that name and that sort of reputation, and building up that gathering through the football or alongside the football club, but as part of sort of, he's got an uncle that's very well known within the Tottenham contingent. It's an organic growth, not a forced one.
Yeah, so full credit to him, and I do stress, he isn't just a ticket seller. He's a very supremely talented boxer as well. And you put the two together, you've got a dream ticket. And he could.
Yeah, you should get a Spurs shirt, Steve. Wear that.
No, I can't do that. I can't do that. Sorry, you can do it.
Show your support for Jamie.
You can do it for me. You know it. You know that. When you come, you can wear. I'll even buy you a Spurs shirt to wear, Martin. So moving on, Tom Simmons is the next one I want to chat about. He's a heavyweight now, trying to work his way down to cruiserweight. He's really too small to mix it in the high heavyweight department, but he's building up his win record whilst he's dropping his weight. And he fought Jake Darnell, won every round, definitely moved faster, throws fast hands. And as he's dropping in weight, you can see the speed improving, the footwork improving. But he's got a stone and a bit to go yet, but he's going to get there. And at cruiserweight, he's going to be a handful. He is too small to mix it with the good heavyweights, but at cruiserweight, he could be a proper weapon in this division. And I'm expecting him to be able to do that. So we're just going to ease him down in weight. But I thought it was a very impressive performance. I think it was the best performance of his career. He was very, very good. Combinations, lots of punches, fast feet. I thought he was excellent on Saturday. So that was great.
How much weight does he have to get down? Like, what's his...
I think he's 15-10 this time, and he's got to get down to about 14-4. He's still got a way to go.
Yeah, it's interesting to sort of track that journey almost and see at what point he is able to do it.
Because the bottom line is you can see there's weight to come down, but he's not being silly. He's not going to try and crash it in one fight and do it. He's going to try and bring it down slowly so he gradually gets towards that weight. And I think that's a really sensible move. Mikey Sakyi had a run out while he's waiting for a big fight to appear or to come on board. We were offered a big fight at one stage, but it just wasn't the right fight for the right money. And Mikey would say it wasn't his greatest night. I think he struggles to get down to these on-the-day weigh-ins now, close to super lightweight. And he said to me afterwards, "I'm never doing that weight again." So he was effective. He won comfortably. But it wouldn't have been Mikey Sakyi's greatest hour, put it that way. But it was good enough to win, no problem. But if he's going to do it on the day weigh-in again, it'll need to be at a higher weight.
And it must also be the psychological as well as the physical. Sort of, he's come from English title fights. He's come from the bigger events and the bigger evenings, and having that sort of tick over. I don't really like the term, but tick over fight to keep himself busy. It must be difficult to sort of get yourself motivated when you've been to the highs that he has, and also the highs that he will be at again, sort of when the opportunity arises.
Yeah. So that was him. The next one, I've got two more to talk about. This was a debut, another debut, Meshack Quailey. He didn't cover himself in the greatest of glory, and I said that to him afterwards. He got a draw with Victor Adaga, but I said, what's happened is Meshack, he's got a good amateur record. His sparring sessions, I've had really good reports of his sparring sessions. He didn't throw a jab. He just tried to knock Victor Adaga out with humongous overhand rights for 4 rounds. The problem with doing that, Victor Adaga knows exactly what to do. So he's avoiding everything, they're crawling, and he's trying to kill him. Not literally kill him, but trying to kill him with these punches. In the end, the referees probably scored it 0-0 because there was just no clean, there was just very little clean work for 4 rounds from either fighter. It was just a brawl. And he said afterwards, I'm not bothered about it. And I said to him, Meshack, you should be bothered because you're better than that. And you need not to let emotions rule your head. He had a big army of fans supporting him. And to be honest, what happened was it took over for him. He'll learn from that. And next time he just needs to come out and do his boxing. And because as we all know, powerful shots come off the boxing. I genuinely don't think there was hardly a jab, proper jab thrown. It was just nuts. It was a crazy fight for whatever it was worth. I've never seen anything like it. And he got a draw, which is a fair result. I don't think you could have scored it any other way. But he'll learn, he'll come back, and I'm sure he'll be a lot more accomplished next time because it won't be such a big rush for him. Sometimes on debuts, you can let it get to your head. Jamie Bradley didn't actually do that because he boxed Paul Scaife and just picked him apart. It was really impressive. But Meshack was just too eager to impress. But he'll learn. The other fight on the card was Ed Chattey. He drew with Robbie Chapman. It was a good performance. Robbie came and gave it a go. And I thought Ed Chattey put up a good performance. He'll learn so much from it. He only had 11 amateurs. I think he's got a good future ahead of him. But a draw is not the end of the world. He'll learn a lot from fighting somebody like Robbie. And I'm looking forward to seeing Ed out next time. Again, I think his trainer, Matthew Hurst, will get it put right, realise what they did that was good and what they did that wasn't so good. And I think he'll be back. So that was the close of the card. But it was a very interesting card, as you can see from what I'm saying. But that was a really, really good card. So I was... it was a good night.
Night. And sort of to back up what we were saying last week about Robbie Chapman and those little videos that he pulls together, the fact that he's now cornering other boxers. Do you know what? To be in there for 4 rounds with Robbie, and when Robbie actually brings it, we know he can fight. There's no doubt about it. I'm sure that's a valuable 4 rounds, even if not the result that the lad's after.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the conclusion of the review from last week.
Brill. Right. So before we come on to previewing this week, the world of boxing, we're going to sort of interlude the Goodwin boxing side of the wider world of boxing. What do you make of Adam Azim versus Ohara Davies as a fight, which has been announced for Sky Sports?
I think that on paper, it's quite an attractive fight when you initially look at it. You think, when you initially look at it, you think, that's a good fight. Really good fight, that. I'm really, really interested in it. When you sit back after you think of the names and you think about it, I don't feel that as enthused. Probably because if it was Adam Azim against Ohara Davies at his peak, yes. But O'Hara's fought once in 21 months and been stopped in a round. And he didn't look very good with his footwork in that defeat, if you remember. He looked all over the place. So unless Ohara is able to magic back something from 3 years ago, it looks to me like a brilliant match for Adam Azim. And it looks like he's going to just have a name on his record. Now, I like Ohara. I do. I think he's been really good for the sport. So I hope he has got something left. But the basis of probability is it looks like Adam Azim is going to beat a name.
Yeah. As you're talking, I was just thinking... Ohara Davies, I have all the time in the world for Ohara Davies. You know, somebody who's come from that small hall scene, who's built up a reputation, got to that Josh Taylor fight. That was sort of the pinnacle almost of what he was going for. Was incredibly unlucky against Jack Cattrall, which has aged so well over time as well. But I couldn't tell you who his best win is. I don't know. Without sitting and looking up on BoxRec who he's beaten, I couldn't tell you who it is. And he's almost like an enigma. That sort of the name Ohara Davies carries more value than actually Ohara Davies. It feels like sort of he's been away, as you say, had that long break, came back, got beaten in a round for a world title against someone who I think we generally accept isn't like an elite level fighter that he got beaten by, was signed by Top Rank apparently, whether that was just for that one fight and then sort of released. I don't know. So it's not.
They weren't apparently involved in making this fight, so he's still under contract with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a criticism of Ohara Davies at all, because I hope he's sort of done well out of the sport and all that. But the name value to me carries more than actually what Ohara Davies is. Maybe that's being a little bit harsh on him, but if Adam Azim is everything that we're sort of told he is, he should wipe out Ohara Davies in under 6 rounds. And anything other than that, I think is almost is less of a win for him.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So no, I'm not against the fight at all, because I still think Adam Azim's got a lot of growth and a lot of learning to do. So I think it's a perfectly good fight. I do find it bizarre that we were sort of given Adam Azim against Harlem Eubank in the ring at the O2 as if they were going to fight and as if everything was agreed, and then they've sort of just gone quiet on it, and now that isn't happening. And I know Ben Shalom's come out saying, you know, we tried to make it, but we couldn't do it for this reason and that reason, and Brighton.
And Calla Sowland has said something totally different, so who knows what the truth is.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, why have you got 2 men in the ring unless there's a contract signed? I don't understand it.
And like Ben said, there was a contract signed, but they changed their mind. The point with that is, if you've got a contract, nobody changes their mind if you've got a contract, because the contract's a contract, right? So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and also presumably brilliant. You'll make Ben Shalom and Boxer really rich people because you've reneged on a contract. So yeah,
I've never heard that before. I mean, if you talk about the king of contracts, which is Frank Warren, not in a bad way, if you sign a contract with Frank Warren, you adhere to that.
Getting out of that.
You adhere to it, and neither should you. If you sign a contract with Frank Warren, you must honour that contract, and so you should. But he will make sure you honour that contract.
Yeah.
But so I think would most promoters. But I'm quite surprised that Boxer was saying they sign contracts. Or Ben Shalom, you'll sign a contract, but if you want to change your mind, you can get out right, you can get out of it. It's quite surprising.
Yeah, well, it's not a great precedent for anyone else who's sort of going to fight on Boxers. If that's the case, it seems as if contracts can be signed and then you can change your mind. But I don't know, maybe there's more to it than that. But
yeah, maybe.
It doesn't look good to me. Like, if you're going to announce a fight, which I know they didn't announce it as in like a date and all these things, but they put the two in the ring next to each other and pretty much said these two are going to fight, and then they don't. It doesn't breed confidence in what you're telling us as fans.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, right. The other point of conversation and potentially contention, Simon Jordan. So he is on TalkSport, ex-Crystal Palace chairman, what was he? Car phone warehouse, something like that.
That's it. And his money out of mobile phones, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Sort of a rich history in business, very articulate, knows his boxing. I don't think that can be doubted particularly. Does his lunchtime show on TalkSport with Jim White, sort of the former man known for doing Transfer Deadline Day on Sky Sports. Highly opinionated, good or bad for boxing?
Good. I like him. Look, he's not always right. He was right about Conor Benn. Because remember when him and Eddie Hearn fell out? When you go back and watch what they were debating, he was right about the Conor Benn scenario. Totally right. And that's where they had the big fallout originally, him and Eddie. But he was right. He was right. He's not always right. But he was right about Saudi Arabia about the fact there's no atmosphere there. He had an argument with Frank. He's right. I know people that go there and work there. They all tell me the same thing. It's dull there. It's really, really weird. They said there is no atmosphere. There is nothing going on. So I think a lot of what he says is totally true. But he's one person in the boxing industry that will not say what he needs to say to get clickbait, to get views, to get... And what I mean by views is he's not going to do what some people do, say, I'm going to interview a promoter on my channel and I'm going to go easy because I need him to come back because I need the clicks, I need the views. He will say what he thinks. So I think that's good. Sometimes I feel, to me personally, referring to Frank Smith as a T-boy is disrespectful. I don't like that. I think that's rude. I think that's uncalled for. Frank Smith has worked his way up and done a good job. And I've met Frank on many occasions, a really nice chat. And I think that's disrespectful. That pushes, personal insults like that, I think are uncalled for. So I like him generally, but I don't agree with everything he does. But I do think he's good for the sport because he creates people's interest, probably in talk sport, drags people into boxing that otherwise wouldn't be dragged into boxing. So overall, I think he's good. Back over to you.
No, I'm with you entirely. He's always very well researched if he's going to sort of talk about a subject. I think one of my biggest frustrations on sort of talk sport, and I'd level this at people like Spencer Oliver, for instance. He often sort of says things that you sit listening to your car thinking, that's not right. Like, that fight never happened, or that fight isn't happening, or that view isn't correct. And it's not that it's sort of like an opinion, it's a fact that those things aren't correct. It's very rare that you're ever going to find that with Simon Jordan. He always comes sort of well prepared, well researched, and ready for an argument. He's always sort of got reasonable points, in my view. Mm-hmm. I think, as what you said, and actually the one that I would put in the same bracket as that is Carl Froch.
Yeah, I like Carl Froch as well.
Carl Froch doesn't care about the access to things, doesn't care about being allowed into like the next interview or being allowed into the next show. He just says what he thinks. And if that's to say, I think Anthony Joshua's this, that, and the other, I think Eddie Hearn's sort of letting us down a bit here. I don't like Saudi Arabia. They say it. And actually, Carl Froch has a real good view on boxing, in my view, that I think it sort of aligns quite well with Simon Jordan.
Because I don't like listening to boxing interviews where all they want to do is suck up to somebody and they won't ask the difficult questions because they're too scared about not being allowed to interview that person next time. That to me is boring. And I think we've had enough of that over many years now. Those interviews are just not worth it. They're boring. They're not
I called it out however many years ago about Eddie Hearn and Coogan and, it was around the StubHub stuff and the fact that the hard questions were never asked. They never were. There's so many questions that still remain unanswered about all that stuff. And then in return, if you sort of build that narrative and build that question around what these things are, then you get someone like Hearn going, oh, you're a transformer. Can't do that to Simon Jordan. Simon Jordan has a platform of which he'll be able to come back and sort of, level those shots back at you. So, yeah, I like it because he sort of holds people accountable. And I think there's a lack of that within boxing media. Boxing media is, frankly, unqualified people who own a camera that turn up at press conferences and ask the same question as the other 5 people in the queue. It's not being horrible. It's what it is. They're not journalists. Simon Jordan may not be a journalist, but he's a very educated man who's willing to ask the correct questions.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We agree he's good for boxing anyway.
100%. 100%. So any other people you want us to debate whether they're good for boxing or not, send them in. We'll have that discussion next week. But yeah, Carl Froch, I'd put him in the same book. He's not the educated type, but he's lived the life. He understands what goes on. He's seen it through sort of various lenses, but he's also not afraid to voice his opinion about the sport.
He's good for boxing. He's good. He's entertaining. He drives big numbers. People want to listen to him because he's different. He's not following the party line. And what you're seeing is, if I look at the viewing figure numbers, Carl Froch now is beating a lot of these people with cameras with their own channels. You're getting more views because he's debating things. I think people, once you watch one of these interviews with certain people, as you rightfully say, you can watch 5, they're all the same. Whereas they will be different. Jordan will say something different. Carl Froch will say something different. and they're good. And the other one I like too, although he's not so contentious, but I like it, is the George Gross stuff. He's not as controversial, but they uncover different topics than you get in the mainstream camera people, if you know what I mean. So I think that's good as well.
Definitely. And I think, again, going back to that sort of ecosystem of interviewing promoters at sort of press conferences and standing around, the likes of Eddie Hearn, I've said it for years, he'd be a phenomenal politician because he always has a line and a story that he wants to get out. It doesn't matter what question you ask him, he's just going to push his own narrative and his own story anyway. And he manages to twist your question into something that suits his answer. Someone like Simon Jordan doesn't allow him to get away with that. And I think that's the difference, is that they'll press and they'll hold to account. And for that reason alone, he's in my good books. We'll move on. We've got the show coming up this week. So the main event is an English title fight along with a Southern Area title fight. We'll come on to those. But let's pick up. You've got some good talent on the undercard.
Yeah, so let's look at... we'll start off with two debutants. Shaun Simpson's the first one. Shaun's boxing Jordan Granum. So, that he's not going to stop him. Even I'll have a bet on him being world champion if he stops Jordan. He won't be stopping Jordan. He had about 18 amateurs. He does a lot of sparring down with the Terry Steward gym. So he's working really hard. He's prepared really well for his debut. He's got a good following, and I'm really looking forward to seeing his debut. Shaun, he's a nice guy. I've been told really great things about him, and I'm looking forward to seeing him. And the other debutant is Ed Harradine, who came last week to the show just to get a feel for your call before. I was quite impressed with that. He came to what it was like, so he was fresh for next week. And Ed's making his debut against another real tough guy in Harry Matthews. Ed, again, very talented man. He boxed around about... I think he boxed about 20 for amateurs, and he won about 15 of them, about 75% strike rate. He boxed out of Battle Bridge. I've heard good sparring stories from him, and I'm expecting to see an accomplished performance. And I hope they adopt the Jamie Bradley rather than the Meshack Quailey thing, because both Harry and Jordan will know exactly what to do if you don't try and box them properly. But I do expect to see them both put on good performances and both be successful. But again, I don't think... I will predict Shaun won't stop Jordan. That's one thing. So sorry, Shaun, but we all know Jordan Granum is one of the toughest men in the country. So elsewhere, Jiyan Oguz, who had a reversal last time, he had a bad night at the office. He comes back over 6 rounds against Luke Fath. Jiyan, I think, is really talented. Something went wrong last time. Preparation wasn't there. He didn't throw enough. I'm sure Josh Byrne has worked hard at him, and I'm expecting to see a totally different Jiyan Oguz this week. Alfie Shrubb won on his debut, was very impressive. He takes on Dale Arrowsmith. Now, Alfie is somebody we just got to build up fairly slowly, but he's going to be just built over the next year like we do with our fighters. I don't think there's anybody better at building fighters to titles than us, and Alfie will be built correctly. And I'm really, he's got Dale Arrowsmith, so Dale's super tough. Louis Haynes, whose opponent dropped out last week. He's boxing Lee Hallett. He's 3-0. He's building nicely, Louis. And, again, I expect him in the welterweight division to be aiming towards titles. I'm sort of building him very similar to Giorgio Isaila, very much in the same way, both building. Don't want them fighting each other down the line. We'll keep them apart. But I'm expecting to see both of them progressing towards welterweight titles. Both of them, when they come through, will be scaring off a lot of other welterweights. They won't be wanting to box them. But Louis is doing really well. The Alex Wilkie fighter, Dean Gardner, he's having another 6-round contest against Christian Lopez Flores. He's moving down in weight from welterweight to super lightweight, is Dean. And I know Alex trying to get him manoeuvred into title contest. But the super lightweight division is a very, very tough division. You've got Mikey Sakyi sitting there. We've got Denis Denikaev fighting for the Southern Area. We've got Yasser Al-Gainer fighting for the English title. We've got Kelly Prosper coming back. The super lightweight division is stacked. So it's a hard division to break through. There's no easy touches in the super lightweight division, but Dean is talented. Then we got Shocki Khan, who's this week he wants to go in. We've got a big fight lined up for him in December, and but he wanted to do a day before weigh-in trial. So he's doing a day before weigh-in at welterweight over 6 rounds against an undefeated foreign kid called Manoj Kumar, who's I've seen him on the internet. He's quite good. It's going to be a bit of a test for him, but he wanted to do a run-through. Rather than do the day before a tough fight for his title fight, he wanted to do a day before tough fight preparation over 6, which I think is quite a smart move for him to do that. So full credit to him. And I'm expecting I'm hoping he's looking good. His uncle is doing a lot of work with him and in Aylesbury. He's a lovely lad, and I'm expecting him to win this fight. Then we move on to the 2 title fights. Now we've got Piotr Mirga taking on Ben Lilley. Peter, former Southern Area super bantamweight title, now goes for the bantamweight title. He's aiming to become a 2-weight Southern Area champion. Not many people achieve this. He's had a crack at the English. He came up short in that fight, but put on an unbelievable performance to try and do it. Prior to that, he had fought Ramez Mahmoud for the Commonwealth silver. Came up a little bit short in that. So he's come up short in 2 fights, but not by a lot. He's performed very well in 2 fights. Without being disrespectful to Ben, this is a slight drop down from where he's been before. Although I've watched Ben Lilley, who's also been unsuccessful for an English title. He's a decent fighter. It's a cracking fight. I think Peter's got the edge for the fight, in my opinion. But it's going to be an absolutely cracking fight. I know that Ben, who's trained by Steve Whitfield, they really fancy their chances. Mark Massow fancies his chances with Peter. I think it's going to be a cracking fight. But obviously, we're backing Peter, and I think the edge is with him. He's been at the higher level on more occasions, and I think he's got enough in the locker to win this. But it is going to be a cracking fight.
I think that Piotr Mirga Ramez Mahmoud fight. I don't think Peter turned up his full self that night.
No, he didn't.
I don't think he was, and whether that's because Ramez sort of stopped him from doing so, I don't know. But I've seen Peter various times, and that wasn't his best performance by any means.
It was not.
Then he went on to the Nico Levers fight, and he was brilliant that night. Tough as they come. He was in that fight right up until he got stopped. Was it 9th round? I think?
Yeah.
But he really gave a showing of himself that night. Whether he can carry that down to bantamweight, he's such a tall lad, isn't he? Like, I know he hasn't got much meat on the frame, but he's such a tall lad. Whether he can carry himself down to bantamweight to sort of keep up keep up that Nico Levers performance, I think that's the biggest test for me. If he can, then I think he wins.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm hoping he's got this right, and Mark Massow's got the job right with him. So I totally agree. We've made the fight, and we got it on home territory rather than away territory, and we've done it because we think he can win. But it's no gimme. Ben Lilley's a decent fighter, really decent fighter. So yeah, but we do think he can win. And then we move on to a bit of history, hopefully to be made. Linus Udofia to win the English middleweight title for the 2nd time. Linus, to me, is one of the unlucky guys of boxing. Sometimes things have to fall your way, and sometimes things don't go your way. And it's not lack of talent, that it's just sometimes bad luck, bad things. So if you think about Linus, he was right at the peak of his career, of his thing, when he fought Denzel Bentley for the British. That fight could have gone either way. It was a split decision. He could have got it, but he didn't get it. If he had got it, he would have been British champion, moving on to wonderful things. He never got it. And you could speak to 10 people and I'd have scored it 5-5. 5 for Denzel, 5 for Linus. He just didn't get the rub of the green. Comes back, gets a big fight against Kieran Conway. He gets a freak punch in the eye that closed his eye, and the fight got stopped. That's so unfortunate. So whilst that's going on, his stablemate Brad gets a crack at the British with Nathan Heaney, becomes British champion. And so Linus has to now go. And so he had a big fight on Sky. And the week of the fight, he went ill. He was ill. Yeah. He was really ill. He had to pull out of that. So he had another opportunity afterwards where illness grabbed him. He was ill for a month. So you've had the two disasters, the illness coming up to Sky, and so now he's going to try and force his way back by being English champion again. Look, I think he wins, but Catlin is not bad. He's with the Kevin Marie stable. They fancy it. Mike Jennings coming down. It's a proper training, and he hits hard. It's a proper fight. It's not something we chose. It was mandated, and we do fancy Linus to win because we think he's a supreme talent. But this is no gimme. This is no gimme. No gimme. I would be disrespecting Dan Catlin and the Jennings Marie team if I said it was a gimme. Of course, I expect Linus to be too good. I think he's exceptional, but things can go wrong. We know that. We've seen it before. But I do remember Linus Udofia beat Tyler Denny to win the English title. Tyler Denny is now where he is, and Linus was the last man to beat him.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, when I spoke with Brad after he won the British, and we spoke about Linus, and he said sort of if Linus finishes his career without winning the British title himself, it'll be a massive injustice on his talent, on his ability, on his desire, drive, all of those things. And sometimes you say it is about timing and it is about things falling into place. But hopefully for Linus, this is just another sort of building block towards that bigger opportunity that he might have to wait for while Brad sort of sits on the British and that resolves itself. As I said it before, I don't know enough about Dan Catlin, but I know Mike Jennings doesn't work with bad fighters. I know Kevin Marie sort of typically, if he's bringing someone down, he brings them down with high hopes of winning. But yeah, it should be a cracking fight. I can only, again, sort of side with Linus purely because of sort of history and knowledge of him. But for anyone there on Saturday night, that will be a cracking fight, I'm sure. And you've said off camera, I'll sort of tell people what you've said about Dan Catlin there. You say off camera as well, is not to bring hyperbole to him, is that you wouldn't have picked that fight in an ideal scenario, but you'd still favour Linus to win it. But it's not one that you'd pick if you had the options.
No, I'd pick a much softer target if we could pick it, but we couldn't pick it. The board mandated it. So we got what we got. We got what we got.
Yeah, which, for those people there Saturday night, brilliant. So they're going to get real value from it. That'll be an absolutely cracking fight. And that Piotr Mirga fight will be brilliant. There's a lot of talent on that undercard as well. So yeah, that's a really nice build-up and sort of run into the Boxmania show in October. But yeah, it's a good sort of a really good solid card on Saturday night.
It is. It's really good. I'm looking forward to it. And then we get a few weeks off before we Boxmania. But yeah, it's going to be a really good night Saturday night. I mean,
what time do people?
The Linus fight would normally have been on Boxmania, but he couldn't do October the 12th. That's why we've gone to this card, because that would have been a Boxmania fight as well.
Yeah. What time can people get into York Hall?
Well, they get in at 5. Boxing starts at 6, but the security checks take a minute forever. So we had people last week. We keep saying, make sure you come early, well before, because it's a long process to get in. So do not turn up. I think my box, the fight I want to see is in 10 minutes time, because you're not getting in. You're going to miss it.
Yeah. The queues end up sort of out of the door of York Hall and around the corner. So give yourself plenty of time. Have one less beer at the pub around the corner and then come along.
Exactly that.
Brill. Steve, right, we will get back together next week where hopefully one of your debutants have knocked out, either Jordan or whoever it is, so I can sit here and laugh at you for making crap predictions as well.
No, my predictions are better than yours.
I can't disagree. I will return with my betting slip for Giorgio next week. But yeah, in the meantime, people have a lovely week. Get down to York Hall Saturday night. See Linus become a 2-time English champion. You get to witness Piotr Mirga and Ben Lilley and all that talent on the undercard. So yeah, have a cracking week. And Steve, we will catch up next Tuesday.
Sounds good. Check care, mine. Thanks a lot, mate.
Take care.
Cheers.